I'm Scott Poynton and welcome to Hilary Thompson, Strength and Guts, another Kiwi podcast. I've known Hilary for many, many years. She's been working for TFT for over 12 years now, but I knew her before she came to TFT when she worked with UK do-it-yourself retailer B&Q. Hilary has devoted her life to looking behind the products we see on shop shelves. She's looked at environmental issues such as no deforestation, but she's also looked, and this has been her main focus, on labour practices and exploitation issues. She cares about people. She's looked at forced and slave labour and child labour in forests, farms, plantations and factories all around the world. But she's also a very private person and doesn't like to talk about herself very much. A few months ago, I asked her if she'd talk to me about something of her life because I find her story so inspirational, and I believe that if we can share it, it might inspire young people, particularly young women, to follow their dreams too. I find Hilary to be a total inspiration, and I hope you do too. Today, I'm sitting with Hilary Thompson. Hilary is a director at the Forest Trust. So I've been working with Hilary for more than 10 years, I think coming up to 12 years, Hilary. And we've done lots of interesting things together. And I thought I'd have a chat to her. We recently did a podcast about the Respect program, which is really a program within TFT on workers' rights. You can listen to that. I'll give you the link to that in the blog that I write about this chat with Hilary. But really today I wanted to talk with Hilary about Hilary and about her life. So, Hilary, welcome to our Kiwi podcast.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Good. And, I started off with the thing that you're a director, but you've been doing stuff for people in the environment, I think, pretty much all your life. And I want to go back over that and say, how did you come to be here at TFT doing this interesting work? What's the backstory to your career, really?
I suppose it started when I used to work for a DIY retailer in the UK, but I worked on the shop floor. I was an assistant manager, filling shelves full of hammers and nails and things like that. And I enjoyed it and it was good. And at the time I was a single mum, so I was bringing up my kids, working weird shifts, and that was quite tough. So I just started to think more and more about the products on the shelves that we were selling and where they were coming from. And so I applied for a job at the headquarters in Southampton. So I moved down there and I started to buy the products that were on the shelves.
So you were one of the buyers?
Yes, so I could kind of see the link. I was in the hardware department, quite tough, bit macho.
Bit macho, yeah. Nails and hammers and drills. And
as a single mum, they didn't really know what to make of me, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
And it was tough. It was tough.
Travelling, a lot of travelling?
Yeah,
out
travelling
to the sources,
to China, to India, to Eastern Europe, places like that. But it was also very rewarding and I enjoyed it. And I enjoyed the buzz and the stress. I did it for 5 years, but at the end of it, I was like, enough stress. Because it doesn't matter. Nothing would change in the world if I sell another curtain pole or another packet of tiles. Nothing's going to change. But I've got to get behind it to see what's going on behind it. And I started off talking to Dr. Alan Knight, who I know you know too.
The famous Dr. Alan Knight, yep.
You must do a podcast with him.
I know.
Yeah,
Alan, if you're listening, I'm coming to see you too, mate.
Yeah. And he started to talk to me about the stuff that's sitting behind it. And that really kind of sparked my interest because it made everything just so much more meaningful. You know, it wasn't just about thousands and thousands of wooden curtain poles I could sell.
We should say that, Alan came to B&Q really to look at the social and environmental, the background to the products.
Yeah,
and he started that program.
We were selling curtain poles, I think it was something like Samba and Toto, which were African hardwoods. And when you thought about it, it's like, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, why are we doing that?
Because they were precious hardwoods. And when we started to talk to the manufacturers, they're like, well, do you want them in pine?
That's what we've always done.
Yeah.
We've made them out of that.
Yeah.
You want them in pine?
Yeah.
So there were options to do other things.
Yeah, there were. And they were cheaper and they were lighter in weight, but they were cheaper too. And they could churn them out, whereas, it was all having to be brought across in containers and then it could be FSC certified because obviously the other stuff was going to be a bit more challenging.
Yeah.
And they could stain it. So before it came over and it was brown, horrible brown, heavy curtain poles, but it was the colour that the wood was, so that was fine.
Yeah.
Or it was natural, and that was fine because that was the colour the wood was. But so with the pine, we had to paint it. But it's like, well, that's not rocket science, is it?
No, and not so expensive.
No, exactly. So we started to do that, and then it was FSC certified, so I could get the pine from properly FSC certified forests in Europe. We just switched the whole range over. And then I started to buy wallpaper. And then we started to have similar conversations.
Where's the fibre coming from?
Where's the fibre coming from? And and it was being made in the UK, a lot of it, but they were bringing the pulp in. So again, we started to go round all the wallpaper manufacturers, talking to them about it. And then in the end, we got them all together because we started to have these conversations. And it was, a curtain pole it's a bit of wood. So it was it seemed much more tangible. Yes, let's swap it. But when you started to talk about paper, everybody was a bit like,
all the
really?
fibres in the paper,
Yes.
where's it come from?
Yeah. Much more complicated. But, Alan and I was well, is it that complicated? So we got them all into a room at a hotel down here and we said, right, we want all the pulp to be FSC certified. And they were like,
spasms.
Yeah. I don't know how many of them there was, about 12 old established companies as well. So they were all a bit taken aback, to be honest.
You're on drugs.
Yes, definitely. Didn't think we meant it. But because at the time I was working with one of Alan's team, so I was the buyer.
Yep.
And I was working with somebody in Alan's team who was their timber expert.
Right.
And they had a target to be pretty much certified. They wanted 100% by probably it was 1999 or 2000. It's going back a bit.
Yep.
So we set ourselves the challenge to kind of support that process. And they all went away. And because I was the buyer, they were, okay, well, we'll have to do it then, won't we?
Yeah, because if they didn't do it,
then I wasn't going to buy their wallpaper.
Right.
And they're very competitive as well.
Mm-hmm.
And, B&Q at the time, big buyers of wallpaper. So, we held weight in the market. Leverage. Yes. Plus, I think they were probably having similar conversations with some of the other DIY retailers as well. So they saw that it was the way forward.
Yep.
But the sustainability guy was going to get nowhere on his own.
Yeah.
So that kind
needed that buying pressure
Yes.
alongside.
And that's something that I think is the key to all this stuff and all the sustainability issues we talk about now is don't talk to the sustainability team, talk to the buyers because they're the ones who write checks. They're the ones the suppliers listen to. And that in that little room, in that hotel, that on that day, they were listening to me. Didn't really matter what anybody, they were listening to me and the power that I bought and what I represented and the money that I represented. So they went away and kind of made it happen. Yeah.
And it did. And from there, it progressed when Alan offered you a job in his team, I believe.
Yes, he did. Because I had got to the stage where I just, however many more rolls of wallpaper I sell.
Stuff.
Yes, no, definitely. So I went to work for Alan and his team and we still had this, I think it was 2000 and something, 2000 maybe, 2001, I started to work with Al. And then we started to go through other areas that we could convert over.
Garden furniture being one of them.
Yes.
Which is where we started to work together.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And then they joined the Tropical Forest Trust as it was then.
As it was when we started, yeah.
Yeah, and I started to come to meetings. And then, so it seemed, and I think I just wanted to do something bigger. So it was great, working for a retailer, but I kind of felt that I'd done what I needed to do.
You've been a store manager as well, hadn't you?
I had, yes.
So buyer, store manager.
Yeah.
You had a lot of challenges in that.
Yes, no, definitely.
Learned a lot.
Yeah, no, definitely. But I was also coming up to the age where the kids were getting a bit older. So I felt, I could, it was a time for a career change for me. Yeah. And this didn't necessarily think it would be this much of a career change, but it did turn out
2004, November 2004. We'll come back to that in a minute. But so, you mentioned a couple of times about being a single mum and, okay, without going into the gory details, I imagine that made a lot of challenges for you. And also you're a single mum in a man's world, really. Being a store manager, there's probably more women store managers now than there was back then. You're talking a long time ago.
Yeah.
And being a buyer, you weren't the only woman buyer, but how did you grapple with that? And my sense is you just got on and did it. But what were the pressures that came on you there? And of course, behind that, what you were doing at work, having to bring up the kids as well. And for me, I've always found that pretty inspiring. And if you could just share a bit with, how that all unfolded. And, I think the best testimony for your good work there is that the kids are fantastic, and they're good kids and they haven't come out all warped and twisted.
No.
But, tell me a bit about that. What was the challenges there that you faced as a single mum and a woman in this sort of man's environment at work?
I suppose I've always been a bit of a one for ploughing my own furrow. I've got 2 brothers and 2 sisters, and sometimes when you've got a household of 5, it's pretty busy. So you tend to cut out your own niche in it. And then, I didn't go to university. I mean, none of my brothers and sisters went to university.
Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Northamptonshire, in the Midlands.
Right.
And I remember get my O levels and get my A levels, and then thinking, well, now what? And I guess I didn't really know, and I just what is it I want to do? So I went off and started working in retail. But I suppose I always knew that there was something a bit bigger that I needed to do, but I didn't really know what it was, and it took me a while to find it. But while I had the kids, I took an Open University degree, which is distance learning.
Yep.
Yeah. So instead of going to a university, a brick-built university for 3 years, you do it for 6 years.
Right.
And that was while I had the kids. So I started it when I was pregnant with Louise, and I finished it just after I had Adam. So that's 6 years of, nappy buckets and high chairs and toddlers and
a university degree.
Yes.
What was the degree in?
It was English and history.
English and history.
Yes,
So lots of writing and stuff.
It was. But I did it. I really enjoyed it, and it kind of opened my brain. I should have probably gone to university initially, but you
just weren't sure what to do.
It worked
right?
out. No.
Yeah.
So I did that, and then I thought, okay, once the kids were at school, now what do I do? So that's when I first started to work for B&Q.
When did the marriage end? I mean, when were you?
About the same time.
Yeah, so about when the kids were 5 or 6.
Yes, yeah,
started
5
to
and
work,
3.
5 and 3. So right from an early age, you were.
So got my own place, went full time. I mean, there was some tough times.
Money wise?
Yeah, but that was tough. And also, the standard Working Mothers Guild, if you're never in the right place at the right time.
Right.
When the sports day comes along, I can remember, shooting out the door, jumping in the car, trying to get to sports day, nativity plays.
Yeah.
Getting up in the morning, have they got packed lunches? What's going on there? It was a whirl.
And you weren't where your family was either, so you couldn't get a lot of assistance from them.
No, but then every now and then if I had to go away, my mum would come down, so that she was invaluable and I couldn't have done it without her.
Yeah.
So she would willingly come down for a week and babysit with the kids, or they would go to her. She helped me out at school holidays and stuff like that. It was tough.
Yeah, but
it was tough. Yeah.
Yep.
But the kids have grown up to be very independent too.
They have, yeah.
Which is
and both doing well.
Yes, they are. Yeah.
Ad's has got a great job, and
my daughter's a lawyer.
Lou is a lawyer doing great things.
Yeah, so
you must be real proud.
They do. And Adam made me smile last week because he was here for dinner, and he said, "Oh, well, you're a great role model, Mum." And I think that's really important when your kids start to say things like that to you, isn't it? Because he's in procurement, funnily enough. And I keep giving him grief because he buys coffee cups.
Right.
So I'm like, come on.
Where's that from?
Where's the recyclable coffee cup coming? And he's working on it.
Is he?
Tells
Good on
me.
him.
Yeah, and he told me last week that he's one of his suppliers is working on, because it's difficult because coffee cups need to be waterproof, obviously, because they're holding liquid.
Yeah.
But that makes them not recyclable because the plastic and the paper are bonded together. I know a lot about
So I don't. Well, there you go. So I didn't know that.
So the facilities do exist to recycle them currently, but in a very small way. And of course, the whole point, I'm going to bore you to death with this. But the whole point of a coffee cup, which you go and buy from Starbucks, is you go away with it.
Yeah, right.
So some of them will have a little tub, put your coffee cups in here, we'll recycle it.
Generally people are down the road in their office somewhere.
Yeah, and it goes in the litter bins and then it just goes into landfill.
Yeah.
So I think it's key, and millions and millions of coffee cups go into landfill.
It's bizarre.
So
it's ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it is. And it's something that the coffee companies, I think, aren't doing enough about.
Yeah.
Some of them will give you a 20p reduction if you go and take your own China mug or something like that, or your own refillable mug. But it's not good enough.
Yeah.
So it's good that we can have the conversations because he's working on it.
Yeah. You're inspiring him.
Yeah, it is.
To look at different boundaries.
Yeah.
And they both got grandchildren. You've both got children, so you've got 2 grandchildren.
Yes, no, definitely.
Yeah. Just recently, yeah.
Yeah.
So how old?
Yeah, so JJ is just over 1.
Over 1, yeah.
Yeah, and Tiger is coming up for 5 months.
Right.
Yes. So they're a deep joy to me.
A deep joy. Yeah, good on you.
But it was tough as we went along.
Yeah.
But, gradually they got older, it gets easier. I don't have to drop them off to school, they walk to school. I do remember when I first came down here having a conversation that they were maybe 9 and 11. And the guy said to me, well, you need to be into work a bit earlier on a Monday morning because really it's crucial, the Monday morning meeting.
Yeah, because you look at all the sales figures for the weekend and things like that.
And I'm like, well, but I can't drop the kids off to 9:15. So...
Bad luck.
Yeah. And that wasn't the answer that he was looking for,
Yeah.
of course. So I just kind of compromised a bit and dropped the kids off a little bit earlier and got into work in a rush and a hurry.
Yeah.
I think it would be better these days. But we're talking, 20 years
20 years ago.
probably. And it was.
Yeah, you were just expected to be there.
Yeah, it is. And it's like, somebody needs to go to Aberdeen. I remember being told, we're all going to Aberdeen, you're coming. Really? It's
Who's going to look after the kids?
Yeah, quite.
Was there an understanding about this, the fact that you were a single mum back then?
No.
I wouldn't have thought so.
No, there wasn't, not at all. It was, and I deliberately didn't talk about it a lot. And when somebody came along and said something like, we need to go to Aberdeen tomorrow, I'd be like, okay, fine. And then I'd be thinking, how am I going to do that?
How am I going to do that?
Yeah. But I kept that to myself and I'd have to go out and make urgent phone calls and stuff like that. And I do think that wouldn't happen now. But it was what it had to be. So, I sucked it up and got on with it. But it did drive me to the point where after 5 years, I thought, no, that's enough now.
Yeah.
And that's when I started working for Al.
On the social and environmental responsibility stuff.
Different challenges.
Yep.
But, less stressful environment. And I went to China and India, but it was more in my control.
Yep.
When I went.
Yep.
So yeah, it's a lot of things that form you to get to the stage of where you're at, isn't it?
Exactly. And the kids, I imagine, you guys I know you're such a closely bonded family. I guess they came to understand what was going on and that maybe you couldn't be there for that activity or something like that, and they got it. So it seems to me that must have been a great influence on them as well. They understood that mum was out working and, they couldn't just sit there and say, my mum's not here for this reason or that reason and get miserable about it. They understood that you guys were working together.
Yeah, no, I think so. I mean, there was, they didn't share it with me too much if they were disappointed, but I did make most things. There wasn't many sports days I missed.
Yeah.
Or many nativity
birthdays
plays and stuff like that,
and
birthdays. And then there was sometimes, when money became easier, there was holidays and trips and things like that, which helped.
Yep.
But yeah, I guess there wasn't many kids in their classroom as they were growing up with a single mum. But, we made it. So we made it and we got to...
Yeah.
And now they're both happily married with children of their own. So, in a lot of ways, my job is done and I've done what I set out to do personally, and that's amazing.
Great feeling.
Yeah.
And now you get to enjoy the grandchildren and hand them back.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yes.
Hand them back when they're rowdy.
Well, JJ's just started crawling. So that's,
great.
He crawls like a rocket.
Does he really?
Yeah. Keep your eye on him. He's out the door.
Out the door. Down the steps.
Yes, quite. Yeah.
Then you joined us. You came to work for TFT in, I'm guessing it was November 1st.
It was.
2004, wasn't it? We hopped on a plane the first day to go over to America, over to Chicago, and it's been an adventure since then as well. And you've done so many fascinating things, so many first things. We got plantation certified in Indonesia that many people didn't think was possible, and you led that program with getting guns out of the forest and working with the teams out there. When you look back on your career, particularly, I imagine, in this more social environmental space, what's been highlights for you, and what would say has been your disappointment? I mean, when we did the Respect podcast, you mentioned about that time you went into the factory in India and found these little kids. Just tell us quickly about that again, and then in your work to try and remedy that and try and bring things, people's lives into a better place and better protection of forests and the environment. What are those things that you look back and say, yeah, I'm really proud of that? And at the same time, what are those things where you think, we didn't make it there and that's a real disappointment? I mean, the work's ongoing, but, you've been with us 10 years, 12 years now. You've been doing that work in B&Q for the 5 or so years you worked with Al. What do you think is your greatest achievement? And at the moment, because that could change, but what do you think is your greatest disappointment?
I think getting the forest certified was great. The Peratani districts, that was great.
Getting the guns out of the forest.
Yeah.
Because people have been killed.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think the work we did on FIPIC was great.
That's this free, prior and informed consent, getting communities involved.
And I think there's been so many highlights. And I think that's something that in TFT we're really, really bad at, because the size of the task we've set ourselves is so huge that sometimes we become overwhelmed by the size of what still needs to be done, and we don't take the small victories.
We don't pause a moment just to say, hey, that's a big achievement.
And I'm always the one who says, that's a great thing, that's a great thing. And we don't do it enough because we have achieved some great things. And I think it's important that we do hold those moments, because I think in the dark times, you can look back on those moments and it gives you the strength to keep ploughing on when otherwise you can just be overwhelmed by, peat fires blazing and
burning millions of hectares and the suffering of the people and things like that.
Yeah, no, definitely. So there's been a myriad of small successes. And I do think that we've been instrumental in changing the palm oil industry as TFT. I think we've sat in some pretty big boardrooms and had some pretty tough conversations. And we are instrumental, we have been instrumental in changing that big tanker that was the palm oil industry, certainly in Southeast Asia around. I don't think it's quite there yet. And I still think you've got a contribution to make. But I definitely think that we were instrumental in some of the early work that's now, and it's great also that some of the companies are now taking it in-house and they do it themselves, and that's great too.
Yeah.
Because it means that we've kind of had a ripple effect.
Yep.
So, we dropped a stone in and it's rippling out and the companies are now owning it for themselves, which is great.
Yeah.
And I think, more and more it's about what the companies can do. I mean, I'm not a great believer in what government can do, if I'm honest, because I think it's bureaucratic. It takes ages. It takes compromise.
A lot of politics.
Indeed. And I just think that it's private sector and the companies that are going to do something powerful and make the big changes. And I think it's the procurement departments of the companies who are going to make the changes.
Because they carry the checkbook.
Indeed. And they're the ones that suppliers listen to.
So years ago.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I wish sometimes, I suppose, that there were, I couldn't do anything about that little boy.
Yeah, just quickly share us that story that where you found that little fella.
Yeah, I mean, I was it was a brass factory, door handle factory in Aligarh, which is just outside New Delhi. And we were doing an audit and we were being shown things. That's what auditors do.
All the good things,
yes,
right?
You're shown things.
Beautiful factory, magnificent.
And some things aren't shown to you. So, as an auditor, and I'm not a great fan of auditing, as you know, but I would like to think the way I do it, I don't get fobbed off. I like what's over there, what's happening there, what's going on here. And we were being shown, all the nice areas, and there was across the pathway, across the yard, there was something clearly going on because there was smoke coming out of the chimney, but nobody was making any attempt to take us over there. So I went over there myself, and of course then everybody had to trail after me.
Having a nervous breakdown, I imagine.
Indeed, yes.
Oh dear, where's she going?
And I opened the door and it was just black with dust and
soot and stuff.
Soot and smoke. And there was just like these rows of little eyes looking at me. All I could see was the whites of their eyes. And they were polishing brass, getting all the flecks of roughness off it to make it smooth for door furniture. And it was heartbreaking because all I could do was shut the door and go along and have a conversation about why it was happening. Oh, it's a subcontractor. That's the usual excuse. And nothing we can do. And,
Little kids in there.
Yeah, and
suffering.
I know that isn't going on now because that particular industry's moved on. But such exploitative practices are still going along. In textiles, for example, it's still going on. And it's still going on in palm oil plantations and in pulp and paper plantations. There's still exploitation going on. And I think that for me, now, in TFT terms, we need to turn our attention to that because I think we've been amazing environmentally, on the forest certification side and on forest management practices and on agriculture and good agriculture and preventing deforestation. And I just would like to see us, now spread we know how to do that stuff. We know how to have the conversations with companies. Yeah. And I would like us now to sit down and have a similar conversation with companies about what they're doing about exploitative practices in their supply chain.
Yeah.
Because it's, it is going on and it needs to stop.
When you left B&Q and joined TFT, you set up your own charity.
Yes.
BTE, Businesses Trading Ethically. And you worked on these issues in India. And you're a very strong advocate for these issues now in TFT. So, notwithstanding, the great things on the environmental side that you've done, I think the human side of things has always been pretty important to you. Where do you think that came from? I mean, we see people who are absolutely adamant about saving the forest and things, and I know you're like that too. But when it comes down to it, if it's a decision between a forest and a person, there's some people who would go for the forest and other people would go for the person. I think you'd be upset to leave the forest, but you'd always go for the person.
Yeah.
Where do you think that came from? Is that your upbringing or just who you are?
I don't. Yeah, it's probably just who I am. I think it's. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think the forest is really, really important. But I was having a conversation with John Nelson recently, who, again, another candidate.
One of our colleagues.
Yeah.
Another podcast person, yeah.
And we were talking about, HCS, and if the community wanted to clear
HCS is high carbon stock forest, yeah. Yep.
And if a community wants to clear it, who are the environmental NGOs to stop them if it's, they've got legal right to it?
Yeah.
And it is an interesting conversation, and that's the nub of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because you speak to the environmentalists and they're like, no forest shall be cut down on my watch. And you speak to the social NGOs who say, if it's their land and they want to cut down HCS, they're perfectly entitled to.
Yeah.
And then the two, the debate just goes backwards and forwards.
Yes.
Yeah, and the environmental NGOs are telling the companies that they have got to incentivise the communities not to cut down beautiful big trees. And that's a valid argument, but you've got to make it happen.
Yeah.
But I think
it's got to be right for the people, doesn't it?
It has. And I think sometimes, I'm just a people person, I think.
Yep.
And it's the people when I love to go out and talk to people in factories and, go to palm oil plantations, obviously with an interpreter, but, talk to the ladies who are doing the manuring and talk about their lives as well. When they finish what they're doing, then they all go back to their plantation houses and, look after the kids again.
So greatest disappointment through your career? Any one thing stand out?
I suppose it would be that, I haven't done more personally to stop exploitation happening, because that's, it's just, when I look at some stuff, I go into shops and I go into some, textile or fashion retailers and you see clothes for a $5 and you think, oh no, oh my Lord, the conditions that
how could they produce that for £5?
Yeah. And they haven't without exploitation going along on the way. And that's grieves me greatly. And I think it's something that, has happened. People know about it. I keep banging on about it on Twitter, know where your stuff's coming from. And you retailers, if you've got transparency of supply chains, because I think in particular in textiles, it's quite difficult because the cotton supply chain, again, ripe for the TFT approach, is very opaque.
Yeah.
The cotton gets down to the gin and then it disappears, a bit like, palm oil does when it gets to the refineries. But we should be able to do something about it. And I think it can be done. It frustrates me that it can be done, but that it isn't being done. It's not that it can't be done, because it can be.
Yeah.
Because there's fair trade cotton and that's segregated and everybody knows where it comes from. And there's organic cotton, but it's so niche.
Yes.
What about the millions and millions of tons and millions of dollars worth of stuff that's in containers now in the world, going backwards and forwards, that nobody knows anything about and that is built on exploitation, particularly in Asia and Africa.
Child labour.
And it's breaks my heart.
Yeah.
But, hopefully, gradually, but it frustrates me because it's not that we don't know what to do, because we do. And I'm talking about we, the big global we do know what to do to stop it happening, and we're not doing it.
I think you've answered this, but, this whole question of inspiration, what gets you out of bed in the morning?
Well, yeah, that's
it's people.
It is. And like when I was little, it was they were little, it was the kids and stuff like that.
Yeah,
and
when you were younger.
I was passionate about what I do. My family is really important to me. But now, since I work with TFT, I do get out of bed in the morning thinking, right, I need to speak to Dan. I need to know what's going on there.
What's the challenge I can grapple with today?
I know what's going on. I need to know what's going on there, because, that was what was yesterday and now what's today. So, that's the reason that it's keeping me going.
Drives you forward.
Yes, indeed, yeah.
You've had another challenge recently, and a health challenge, and had some great news there at one stage with a great, we should say, you've had a battle with cancer. You came out as a cancer survivor. The rotten things come back. How did that play out? I mean, you've got the kids, you're so close, and when you've had that first experience of cancer, was 7 years ago now, and I remember being so inspired by, you had to take a bit of time off here and there, but not much, and you battle through. And you mentioned earlier about ploughing your own furrow and also doing things in silence, not complaining about things.
Yeah.
When you grappled with cancer the first time, we knew it was happening, but you just sort of got on with it, and I found that very inspiring.
Cancer's shit.
Yeah.
Life's unfair. You don't know who it's going to pick on. But I think you just have to get through it. You have to get through it for the kids. And I think work really helped me and helps me now, because it gives you a different focus, because otherwise you could sit in a corner and think, I've got cancer, I'm just going to sit here and suck my thumb and, and
wither away.
Yes, wither away. But I think you've got to go out there really and seize the day as long as you've got a day, and just go with it and fight with it.
And do what you can.
Yeah, indeed.
Do your best.
Yeah.
I think you're doing that, and we know with the Respect program, this is your inspiration. It's very clear. It always has been this, really trying to help people. And I think for me, we know that you've got your own battle at the moment, but you're driving to bring these people to a better life. And I find it so inspiring. And that's really why I wanted to talk to you today, so that people could understand, what that's all about. And I think if we, when I look back on what I know of your life, and being a single mum can't have been easy. Being a buyer in a man's world, I'm sure that came with its challenges. And all the work the long plane rides in TFT and going out to all these places, but getting the results coming through, the guns taken out of the forest so people weren't getting shot, the work in India with the Stone program, and fighting for the rights of workers. I think you've got a lot more to contribute. And, for me, I'm interested to think, where do you think this work's going to go, and where do you think you're going to be taking it in the years ahead?
I mean, I think it's because I'm still up for the new challenges.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that we're looking at the moment in TFT is how we could start engaging with the banks and the financial sector.
Mm-hmm.
So that's some work that I'm keeping my eye on quite closely.
And getting them to use their leverage.
Yeah, absolutely. It's key, because when all the companies we talk to have got banking facilities, have got credit lines open, and if we can target the banks to lend more responsibly, then I think that, that could have a knock-on effect. And I think, we've been speaking to some, we've been out to Southeast Asia, a moment speaking mostly to the European and the American banks, but the ones that we really need to speak to are the Southeast Asian banks. That's where the trouble is. But, we think we can do it. We think we've got something to bring to the table to advise them, bank, lend here, don't lend here, because these guys, and, you're not going to get a good return on your money because they have no international markets.
Yeah, because people will stop buying from them because they're exploiting the workers.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
You think the market's changing that way now?
I'd like to think so. I think the banks sometimes, though, are good at talking and not so great at walking the talk.
Yeah, all talk and no trousers. I think you've used that phrase many times over the years with me, yeah. And
they've all got their nice shiny policies, but I'm just not sure. I mean, I know we've had some conversations with banks over the years and I remember being told a long time ago now that if we were seriously expected them to only bank sustainable forest management practices, they wouldn't have a trading book because nobody was doing it in Southeast Asia. So that conversation didn't go far. And it's just so has things. I would like to think they've changed somewhat, but I'm not sure that they've changed enough. I mean, obviously Greenpeace did Dirty Bankers report recently, and they're starting to put pressure on the banks too. So I think, that's an area that's so we're talking to the companies, that's great. But it's almost like the banks are sitting behind the companies.
Hiding in a way.
Yes. And
increasing the wheels of bad behaviour.
Yes, indeed. And we need to start to talk to those guys because they have responsibility to lend responsibly. And I just think we've started to open some conversations, but they're hard conversations to have. And I don't see an open door there, or if it's open a crack.
Yeah.
I think I don't see any doors blowing in the wind waiting for us to go in.
No,
so
please, you're not being invited in.
No.
Please come and talk to us about this.
No. So, and I gave a talk at a room of bankers in Singapore, must be a couple of years ago now. And normally when I do a talk, I get lots of questions afterwards. And there was just this horrible silence when I finished speaking. I was like, oh, that went well then. And we went into the tea break, and I said to the guy who invited me, what went wrong? And they're like, well, they don't know what to say. You're the first person who's come to talk to them about this stuff, and they really don't know what to say to you. Plus, nobody wants to put their hand up and admit that they don't know what you're talking about, or that they've thought about it. So in the tea break, I was practically mobbed, but nobody was prepared in the bigger forum to put their hands up.
Well, that's encouraging.
And yeah, it is
on
encouraging.
One hand,
And I noticed that I think Greenpeace are currently having a campaign against Standard Charter.
Right. They had their campaign against HSBC recently.
Yes.
Yep.
But the Standard Charter is one of those where they, email the Standard Charter CEO, Bill Withers, I think his name is. But I'm assuming that stuff's going on behind the scenes on that one. But that's key, because I think that could really start to have dominoes effects because the companies would have to listen to their bankers. They don't have to listen to us. They don't even have to listen to the NGOs, but they might have to start to listen to their bankers.
Yeah.
So that's why those bankers have a responsibility. But it's getting in there, getting them to listen.
So that's the next challenge. But let's just looking back again and imagining that there's particularly young women, but I think, your experience is very relevant to also young men coming out of university or coming out of high school and wondering what they're going to do with their life. What do you think of the lessons when you look back and you think, I'm doing all this interesting stuff, and what are the lessons that you'd take from if you look back and you think, what helped me get through that situation? What helped me get that success? What are your key lessons you'd like to perhaps share with people that they can, because we all have dark moments where we hit walls and think, oh, golly, that's no good. But it seems to me that you've been an expert at working through those. What's the essence of that? I
think you have to have focus and hold to what you believe is right. You call it your duck, don't you?
Yeah.
And I think it's you just have to never let it go. And so on the tough mornings when you get up and some disasters happened in some forest in Southeast Asia where, you thought it was all going well and something's gone catastrophically wrong.
Someone's been shot or something.
Yeah. Then you have to think, no, I can do this. I can get over this. I think it's just being forthright and strong. I think it's not an industry, or it's not even you need strength and guts to go into this and to try and make a difference, because there's so many naysayers and so many people who don't care, and so many people will, talk you down and shout at you and say you're being an idealistic idiot. But if you believe it in your heart, then you just have to keep on morning after morning, getting up and going out there and doing it. And being engaged and being open, because there's always two sides to every debate. There's always ways around it. If somebody drops a block of granite in your path, you have to think, okay, how am I going to get around it? I can't move it. I can go over, I can go under.
I can keep trying to bash my head against it, but I'm not going to get very far.
Yeah. So I've got to come up with an inventive way of doing something about it. Because I think that's one of the joys of TFT, I think, as well, is that we are solutions oriented. So when there's somebody drops the granite block in front of you, in front of us, our automatic instinct is to get together and have a chat. What can we do about it? Not to say, okay,
oh dear, that's the end of the road.
That's the end of that then. Or we're not going to be doing anything about that then, are we? Our view is, okay, let's sit down. Let's go out and measure trees. When it was HCS, let's go out and measure trees. Let's go out and do the ground truthing. Let's find out what's going on. Because that's a classic example of a huge dilemma that we had, that we went out and worked with people to sort out. So I just think that we, our solutions-oriented approach means that we get around the blocks. And I think that's, some people would just give up.
Stay focused.
You have to stay focused.
Work around. Stay true to what you believe in.
Yeah.
When everyone's telling you you're an idiot, keep going.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think that's probably a good place to bring it to an end. And I want to thank you, Hilary, again for having this chat. I know you don't necessarily like talking about these things, but you've always been a battler and you've achieved so many great things. And for me, as I've always said, it's very inspirational. And you've got battles ahead with the work that you're doing, and the banks, look out.
Yeah.
Hilary's coming.
Yes,
and, and I think what you're doing with the Respect program and trying to help people avoid these terrible exploitative working practices is just so much needed. And of course, the battle that you're facing in your personal life, and we're all there with you. And I think we're looking forward to just seeing you plough that furrow and keep going for years and years ahead. So thank you for your work and for the joy you bring us.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Hilary Thompson, Strength and Guts. My biggest hope in sharing something of Hilary's story is that it will inspire young people, particularly young women, to follow their dreams too and go out into the world and make a difference in people's lives, just as Hilary has done. I'm Scott Poynton. Thanks for listening.